morning, girls. Hello, everyone. How are you today? Our lesson for today is Lesson 4, Decimals Greater Than 1. In the lesson before, we have learned the decimals that is less than 1 as the fractions. We said that the decimal is like a fraction. When the fraction is less than 1, the decimal will be less than 1. And as we have fractions greater than 1, also we have the decimals greater than 1. So what is the difference between the decimals greater than 1 and decimals less than 1? Let's first remember what is the decimal. We said the decimal is the number that has decimal point and it has two sides, right side and left side. On the left side, we have whole numbers, and on the right side, we have the decimals or the fraction, right? So if I want to read this number, I will read it easily and simply I will say it's 5. But 5 what? We said that the number that comes directly after decimal point, we call it tenth. And the number that is coming next, the second one, we call it hundredth. So as you see, those numbers, we read them and write them as TH in the last. Not like the whole numbers on the other side. Here we have ones, tens, hundreds. We write it as it, the word without TH, right? So what is the whole here? The whole is 0. So this is what we have learned in the last period. The decimals that have 0 in the whole, it means these decimals are less than 1. Okay, so how can we read it? I will say I have 5, so it's 5. 5 what? Is it only 5? Or 5 tenths? Or 5 hundredths? What is it? It's 5 tenths. So it's 5, and I say tenths because it comes on the first place directly after decimal point, right? Let's move now to the other example. Here it's just only to remember how we read and write decimals that is less than 1. This decimal also is less than 1. How I know that? Because here I have 0. 0 whole. I don't have any whole here. It's less than 1. So how can I read this? Simply, I will look to the number and I will see 17. So it's not enough to say only 17 because actually this number is not 17. This number is 17 what? Hundredths. How I will know? Is it tenths or hundredths? After decimal point, it has two numbers. I told you, two numbers like two zeros in the 100, right? So 17 hundredths, right? So how I read this all? I will read it as 0 and, so the decimal point, I will replace it by the word and. So I will read it like, listen to me carefully. 0 and 17 hundredths, right? I will make them as parts. 0 and 17 hundredths. Did you see, guys? Now let's move to our lesson. As you see here, we have many decimals. Here we have two types of decimals. Some decimals here are less than 1 and other decimals is greater than 1. Right? I will circle the decimals that is less than 1 in blue. So this is less than 1. How I know that? Because here we have 0. Okay, what else? Very good. 0.1 tenth. Here, 0 and 3 tenths. Here, 0 and what? 12 hundredths. So I circled here only the numbers that comes on the whole number 0, as you see, right? So those decimals are less than 1. I will circle now in green the decimals that is greater than 1. This decimal is greater than 1. How I know that? Because here I don't have 0. I have another number. I have a number that is greater than 0. Look at here, we have 3. Here we have 2. Here, what is the whole? 1. Here, what is the whole? 2. Here, what is the whole? 8. Here, what is the whole? 7. What can you notice here, girls? We noticed that all the decimals greater than 1 has a number on the whole. It's not a 0. 5, 3, 2, and so on, right? So you will not see a 0, you will see a regular number. Any other regular number over 0, right? Starting from 1 to the other numbers, right? So as you noticed here, now we started to know the difference between the decimals that are greater than 1 and decimals less than 1. Okay, look at here. Here we have this model, and I want to show a fraction for this model. As you see, this is 1, right? Because all of it is shaded. So it's one whole. And here we have a decimal or fraction. What is it? Because one part is shaded out of 10, so it will be 1 out of 10. Did you see, girls? So 1 and 1/10. 1 and 1/10. 1 is the whole here, and here 1 over 10. So how can I write this mixed number into a decimal? As we know that we have decimal point, and on the left side I have the wholes, and on the right side I have the tenths and hundredths. So just close your eyes, girls, and listen to me. 1 and 1/10. 1 and 1/10. Can you imagine now the decimal? For sure. Listen to me, girls. If you know how to say or read the fraction or the mixed number, you will be able to write the decimal, because we are reading and saying the number the same way in both fractions and decimals. So as you see here, we have 1 and 1/10. You know how to write 1/10. You will write the 1 in the 10th. We have learned this in our lesson before. Okay, what about the 1? 1 whole. Here before we wrote 0, but actually in this lesson we will write it as a number because we have already a number here. Okay, we have a whole, so I will write it here. So can you read this again? 1 and 1/10. See, girls, 1, and this is, can you separate this? This is 1/10. So just join them, 1 and 1/10, right? Very good. Look at here, as you see, small squares. What I mean by that? Yes, hundredths. So the model here is showing me hundredths. So for sure, my fraction or mixed number is out of 100. Okay, let's count how many whole we have. This is the first one. This is the second one. So how many whole number we have here? How can I write this model? I have all of this shape is shaded and all of this is shaded. So I have 2 whole, 2 in the whole. This one only show me the fraction. But what is it? I will count by tens. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. And here we will count them separate, 74. So I just counted the fraction here, and here we have 2 wholes, right? So read this fraction or this mixed number, 2 and 45 hundredths. Again, 2 and 74 hundredths. So you can imagine this and write it as a decimal. I will write the decimal point. See, girls, how I convert it into a decimal. I will just write the decimal point, and on the left side, I will write the whole, and on the right side, I will write what? The decimal or the fraction that I have actually. So here is the whole, and here is the fraction. So how many whole we have? 2. What is the fraction? 74 hundredths. Directly go and write it after decimal point. 7/4 hundredths. To make sure of your answer, just reread it again. Read this again. 2 and we read the decimal point as and. 2 and 74 hundredths. Why I said hundredths? Because after decimal point here we have 2 digits, right? Let's move here. Also here we have some fractions are less than 1 and some fractions greater than 1. How you will know? Just look to the left side. I will look to the left side here actually, like I have 0. Okay, so I will write to the left side. I will underline the left side. What I have here? 0. So this is less than 1. What I have here? 0. It's not written actually, but even if you write it or not, it is the same. What I have here? 17. What I have here? 2. All of these decimals are greater than 1. This one, 32. This one, 32 also. Right? So let's try to read. Let's try to read the first one. Okay, let's choose this one. So let's try to read this. How many whole you have? I will start right from the whole. 0. So I will say 0 and what? 36 tenth or hundredth? For sure it's hundredths because 2 digits, 2 zeros. The hundreds have 2 zeros. So 36 hundredths, 0 and 36 hundredths. Can you write 36 hundredths as a fraction? For sure. 36 hundredths. Numerator, denominator, right? Very nice. Let's take only this one as a whole. What we have in the whole? 32. So I will read it as 32 and 2 what? 2 hundredths or 2 tenths? I will read it as 2 hundredths for sure because we have after decimal point they filled 2 places. So I will write it in a fraction as 32 whole and my fraction is 2 hundredths. Actually this is whole and this is the fraction. So 32 in the whole and my fraction is 2 hundredths. How can I write it? 2 out of 100. Done? Okay. Let's move now to the words. How can I read it and write it as a word? 24 hundredths. 24 hundredths. Just close your eyes and read it many times until you understand it. 24 hundredths. I can write it as a decimal and also as a fraction. 24 hundredths. 24 hundredths. Did you see? Here is as a fraction and here it's as a decimal. Right? Very nice. What if I have 2? Let's write it as 2. If I have 2 and 24. 2 and 24. So I will just read it. 2 and 24 hundredths. Okay? If I have whole, I will write the whole, then the fraction. Okay. Now, let's see. 1/10. I write it as fraction and as a decimal. And in word, 1/10. See the 100 and fraction, 100th and decimal. I read it in word like 100th. Remember, TH. Here, how can I read this? 2 and 2/10. See, I will read the whole first. 2 and 2/10. Actually, I have 2 and 2/10. Just read them together. 2 and 2/10. I can write it as a fraction like this way and as a decimal like this way. And so on. Look at this question, girls. Here we have this number. I will not read it now. I will just give you a moment to think about this number. How we can read it in words and in fractions and how can we show it as a model. Can you do it by yourself? Just go, have a paper, Write this example now and try to answer it by yourself. I just want from you to write it in words here, in letters, okay? And here write it as a fraction, and here write it as a model, because here is already written by a decimal. So what is the key here to know the answer? Is to know how to read this decimal. So just try to read it by yourself. Then go and answer the question. This is the first question. Here, I prepared for you a game, and you have here a picture or a model. You can color it as you want. Then you can color any parts, any number of parts here. Then you can create the decimal and the fraction. You will create them, right? Create them in many ways, here and here and here.